Upper body rotation in the golf swing, it's something that we know should exist. Exactly what it is and how you do it is kind of something that I think most amateur golfers don't understand exactly what's going to be going on. Today in this video we're going to talk about upper body rotation coming into the downswing and then going into the through swing. It's really important for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons that we tend to see is that the release, right? So a lot of amateur golfers end up looking this way, kind of chicken winging more than kind of, should we say, releasing the club. The release is just the term, I suppose, as to when you feel like you're really hitting the ball. So why would you end up doing something like this? And the other thing is, why would you end up kind of, should we say, standing up and kind of finishing the swing more this way? So basically I see this a lot with amateur golfers, and there's so much content out there about the release and how you should finish and to try and roll your wrist and all the rest of it. You know, I genuinely believe it would be a byproduct of you sequencing the events to the point of impact correctly will then mean that you'll naturally release the club. And you know, when I get people to demonstrate like a baseball swing or throw a ball, and to do this or this, they'll never kind of go this way, which suggests that they understand the pattern of movement, but they just don't necessarily understand why it's happening. So I think if that's relatable for you in your golf, then this video becomes really important about what you've got to do coming in towards this through swing. So are you somebody who knows that you kind of chicken wing and you don't strike the ball as well as you like, or equally are you somebody who just kind of, you know, has a hip extension and you move closer towards the golf ball? You know, those two things are really, you know, mainly noticeable in the through swing. So rather than kind of, should we say, staying down in posture and swinging all the way through, we tend to see a lot of golfers kind of finishing this way. This video is going to explain exactly why that's happening. As ever in these videos, we have to make the assumption that the backswing is in a decent position, right? We have to make sure that things like the weight transfer, you're getting pressure in the right hand side and you've got a decent backswing position. If that's the case, then you're free to start working on the stuff I'm talking about. If that's not the case, then arguably the stuff you're going to try and work on in this video won't come to fruition because you just can't, because you're not in enough position to start off with. Right. Talking about the upper body move and mainly focusing on that then, the first thing that I think we all agree on is that, again, in a decent position at the top, the first thing that needs to happen is we need to find a way to shallow the golf club, which basically means that the club needs to look more this way, and I'm pretty sure we all agree it shouldn't look this way, right? The way that this happens is that basically my right elbow drives in front of my right hip. What this does is it creates a external rotation of the shoulder, which basically means now you can see my right shoulder is dropping vertically downward in this first move. Also, it's kind of starting to introduce like a side crunch. You can see the way my right shoulder is getting closer towards my right hip. This becomes more apparent later on. But it's important that I think we all agree that you don't start the downswing doing anything like this, and we need to do this first. Next thing that we need to agree on then is that what we don't want to do is we don't want to early release the club. Right, so we don't want to kind of give any sort of casting motion to what's going on, because we know that's not going to be beneficial for things like your distance, your contact, club face stability. You know, you're trying to hold on to the relationship between the left arm and the shaft for as long as you can, because the later you can release it, yes, you'll become more powerful, but also it gives you the ability to kind of control the low point and that impact area more. So if we understand the second benefit to the golf swing is that we now need to find a way where we're at the top, we've got the right elbow in front of the right hip, to some sort of position on the way down. Now what we've got to do is that you could arguably hit the ball from here, but you're going to be releasing the club quite early. So by now introducing an element of lower body rotation, we can now see the way that all of a sudden I'm able to get closer to the ball and still maintain the relationship between the left arm and the shaft. All of a sudden we're in a pretty good position. I think what's important to understand throughout all this process is, and I've documented it before on the channel, is like the rib cage and this sort of lateral bend motion helps you create further rotation and has massive benefits into your ability to kind of, for example, swing higher. You would need to create this sort of motion, right? If I go this way, I can no longer swing higher. So it's the same on the through swing. So my point is that I think a lot of golfers understand the idea of rotational movements, and they understand the idea that the shoulders obviously have to move, but how they move and when they move and what it feels like is I think vague, right? Now where we are in this swing is that we've kind of got into the top, we've driven the elbow, we've turned the hips. Now the feeling is really that when we come to hit the ball from here is that obviously we want to do a couple of things, right? We don't want to now stand up, we don't want to encroach the space, so we know that when we come into the hip we want to clear the left hand side out of the way. Again, I think we all agree on that. What we also don't want to do now is we don't really want to chuck the right shoulder over in this sort of direction, because the club's now going to travel out to in, and again we don't want that either. So What starts to happen is that the left shoulder kind of retracts up and behind your head from here. What is also happening at this position is because of this left leg now potentially straightening or more rotation to move out of the way, for the first time you're starting to introduce a hip thrust moving closer to the ball. So these are the kind of movements that are starting to happen. Now what you can see as I mimic this, my shoulder goes more up behind my head. I'm still able to hold on to the relationship of things like my wrists and the arm and the elbow. And it means that as my right shoulder now kind of drops more, should we say the shoulders are working on more of a vertical plane, then all of a sudden the impact starts to look much more powerful and more desirable. What's important to understand is that if you got into this position, and in theory you can stay in this sort of position as you swing through, then all of a sudden you've got yourself into a position where you are triggering rotation of the chest and you're triggering rotation of the body, and that means that it's beneficial for you to create more power because obviously you're no longer stopping and stalling. Also, by swinging through and maintaining this angle means that the hips are still staying back out of the way, which means you can increase the range of rotation on the lower body as well. Basically just means that you're creating space so you can swing through. Now what will start to happen is that if you can get yourself into this sort of position, then your arms are going to be able to extend through going into the hip. And like I see on a daily basis with golfers I work with, all of a sudden if you start to move this way, you're naturally going to be able to release your arms in front of you. See, the problem is that if you get one of these movements wrong, so let's say we get to here and then all of a sudden you release the club because you don't continue to turn, you see the way my upper body's now forward facing, which means as I go through here, there's no way I can extend my arms even through massive manipulation. And to be honest, even if you did setting up and you're somebody who kind of stands up and then you're trying to get like this release, you know, the golf ball's going to go 70, 80 yards left. You know, your brain just isn't going to want to do that again, hence the reason why this will come back into your game. So putting the hands across the shoulders, we're in the top of the backswing position. As we start to come down, the elbow drives forward. So this is what I mean. All of a sudden, when you start to drive the elbow forward, this is when you'll get this first feeling of the rib cage rising up on the left hand side. Now the whole point of this rising up is that, yeah, okay, you might feel like you're more blocked, but actually it's helping you encourage a rotation as opposed to just dropping down. If I just kind of drop the hands and the arms down, all of a sudden I'm going to get stuck very quickly. Driving the elbow forward helps this rise up and it helps me start to trigger a rotation of the upper body. Like I mentioned earlier, if I continue to rotate my lower body out of the way, actually my chest is already forward facing towards the target, again, as opposed to being here. You know, you're going to get stuck here, you're going to get flippy, this is not where you want to be. But I feel like you're turning your chest towards the target as you keep swinging through. The thing is, with this feeling, you want to make sure you're swinging the club on plane, which is why you need to get this sense of the shoulders operating more vertically coming into the hit. Because if you try and turn your chest and your shoulders come round, you're going to swing over the top, which is no good. So you're trying to go this way as much as you can to hold it as long as you can, because that helps you delay the inevitable release, but it gives you the best chance of swinging the club on plane. What will happen is that, as you can see now, and this is kind of what was noted in the thumbnail, is you can start to see the way my left rib cage is rising up. What this does is this helps me trigger a rotation to keep moving through, but therefore it's helping me create space. Again, from face on now, I would swing up. First thing that happens, elbow drives forward. You can see the way my left shoulder goes up, and again I get this feeling of this rib cage rising up, but it also feels like a side crunch from the right side's perspective. Then I trigger a bit of rotation, so already my chest is now more forward facing towards the target as opposed to towards you. Again, from here you don't want to be, here you do. As I continue to rotate, like I mentioned earlier, then we'll create the thrusting motion. Well, what you can start to see from here, maybe more here, is how much space is out in front of me to be able to extend my arms. It's all been created by understanding the functionality of the rib cage, and the shoulders operate more vertically. It creates all this space so I can extend my arms through. As soon as you get this bit wrong and you work this way, or you start to stand up, then that's when you're going to get stuck and you're going to get flippy. See, what prompted me to do this video is loads of golfers are taking the opportunity to send the swings into the channel. It's absolutely free, and I'd suggest that you guys do it as well. Started to see some great swings, loads of golfers getting into great positions coming down, but then kind of standing up, right, instead of continuing this rotation, and if you like, in essence, trying to stay more in posture. That's why I'll do it, and what we will do on this kind of video is we'll discuss it in more detail further down the line on the channel. So if you're interested, press that subscribe button, press the little bell icon as well, and that means you won't miss a notification every time a new video comes out, because it's something that you're not going to want to miss. Now there will be people out there that will kind of think, well, oh, it's another contortion move and all the rest of it. Well, to be honest with you, what you've got to remember is that, yeah, okay, if I kind of rehearse this position, and let's say you're at home and you're trying to get the feeling of the shoulders being more vertical, then you might feel as though, yes, you're starting to get a sense of kind of activation in different parts of your body. But you've also got to remember, in the golf swing, you're only going to be in that position for like a microsecond anyway. The other thing that people forget is it's like baseball. If I was going to bat the ball towards you, I'd move this way, yeah? Because again, what it does is it helps me get the hips out of the way. That is a really important thing. When you watch the pros, you'll see them all in this sort of position like so. And what you'll also see is as they swing through, they'll always retain this spine angle as well, like this. And as you see this is why most of them look like this at impact. You know, so what I'm trying to say is that even if some of you might feel you're of a certain age or whatever, I'm not suggesting you have to kind of get right down here. But what I am also alluding to is that it has to exist as some entirety. You can't just dismiss it because of your age and then advocate that it's okay for you to kind of stand up and hit it like that, because it's just not true. You know, you might not get down here, but any sort of movement in the right direction is still a positive thing to try and do. Okay, so the question might be, how do you do it, right? Well, how would you do it? Well, that's my point. It's a sequence of events. The first thing you'd have to do is this. Then you'd have to trigger lower body rotation. The point is, by the time I get into impact into this position, yes, my right shoulder's dropped down, my left shoulder's up, so they're on a very vertical axis. So if you were looking at it from a side-on perspective, it would look like my shoulders are very square, but because of the functionality of the rib cage, this is rising up, and that lateral bend I've spoken about, you can actually see the way my chest is very much kind of forward-facing towards the target. From here, basically, I've rotated, so now I can extend my arms coming in towards that hit. I would just kind of video this, right? So during this video, you've seen the pro swings that have come up, and you've seen the kind of constant theme of that post-impact position, the way they're still down here. It'd be something that I'd start to video, right? If you're familiar with the channel, you'll know that I'd always suggest when you video your swing, you draw a line on the back of your hips and you make sure you're not moving this way. If you've been struggling with that, that's my point. If you start to focus on your shoulders, then your hips will naturally have to react by getting out of the way anyway. As I mentioned previously, if you're somebody who's always been this way and always been this way, and you've never been that great at impact, well, if you start to focus on this position, it actually creates a huge amount of space. And I think it's really worthwhile having a go with. Just a quick point actually, get a lot of questions now coming in about, can you give us feelings, can you give us more drills? It's tricky. It's hard with the feeling because in reality the problem with the feeling is that it won't be applicable to everybody. Plus the other problem with the feeling is that it won't necessarily last forever, right? The whole point of this is that I'm trying to break it down so you understand exactly what needs to happen. You know, that might just mean that you have to kind of persevere by videoing your swing, mirroring the right sort of movements, and then it will start to come to fruition. I can say for feelings though, with regards to this, is that the first one, with driving the elbow forward, what I tend to see as a common theme is not only should it drive forward, it should feel as though it drives upward. Right, I tend to see a lot of golfers who try and drive the elbow down and they end up going more this way. The idea is the elbow goes more in front, so this external shoulder rotation, which means that you're kind of in essence losing an arm wrestle. You can see the way the right elbow therefore is feeling like it wants to go more up. That's a feeling which seems to work across the board with a lot of amateurs. Also feels different is your general perspective of the ball at the point of impact when you get your shoulders into this sort of position more. You start to introduce more of that lateral bend, then all of a sudden you're going to look like you're in a different position in terms of your perspective of the ball at the point of impact. Those are the two suggestions really. Obviously post-impact will feel different, but your priority is to make sure you do this first, trigger the rotation, get the feeling of the shoulders. It will definitely feel different. As always, hopefully you really enjoyed the video. Always appreciate a thumbs up. Comments in the box below if you've got questions about this video, questions that you'd like to see in the future, or just if you appreciate the video, I appreciate the comments. It helps me out a lot. As I mentioned earlier, press that subscribe button. It's absolutely free to do so. Press the bell icon as well. Don't forget, it's absolutely free also to send the swings into the channel so I can help you guys out. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Like I said, it's something that we're going to discuss in more detail in the upcoming weeks, but I felt like it was something that was important to just at least kind of discuss over in some entirety today. I'll catch up with you again soon.